All right, guys, we're back on Corvair content, and in today's episode, we are going to try to get my 1967 four-door late model Corvair running for the first time in decades. Nobody seems to know. Okay, so Corvair content today, but not with the chop top bagged Monza. Oh, and actually, let's just absorb the 1000 SP being outside. Golly, I love this car. But I've told you guys we're gonna have some more Corvair content soon, and that's what we're doing today. We are working on the 1967 late model four-door. Now, I picked this thing up a while back. I did an episode of going to get it. A lot of late model Corvairs are usually power glides. I mean, you can find the manuals, but I was having a really hard time finding them. But I was looking for a four-door late model in a 4-speed or 3-speed manual. Now, I have no idea when this thing was run or driven last. The previous owner had put new tires on it. It's complete, it's got a full interior, and everything's there in the engine bay too. So it's got the dual single barrel Rochesters, probably a 95 horse. My Monza's a 110 horse with a similar motor, with the 2 carbs. But everything is accounted for. We have carburetors, we have fuel lines, we have a fuel pump, alternator, distributor cap, wires, coil. Everything is accounted for, throttle linkage, and it's got oil. So I have reason to believe that this thing should be able to run without too much problem. But I don't know what took it off the road in the first place, if it was just time or if there was an issue with the motor. Now, it's got oil in it and it's not leaking anything, which is usually a sign with a Corvair that there's no oil in it. If it's not leaking any, it doesn't have any in it, because they seem to find a leak no matter how often you seal the thing up. But I did bring a battery with me when I went to look at this car, and I hooked the battery up and just tried to see if it would turn over, and it wouldn't. It just click, click, click. And it sounded more than just the starter engagement. It sounded like the starter was actuating and the motor wasn't turning over. So, don't know what that's all about. Just tried it a couple times, and then we winched it onto the trailer and we came here. But would just love to hear this thing run, as I do have big plans for this car on the channel. You guys will see plenty of content of this car in upcoming episodes. But for now, let's see if we can't get this thing running. So we know we have oil. Probably what I'll do next is I'll pull some spark plugs. I'll pour some Marvel Mystery Oil down in there. Should have done that a while back, but I am all over the place here. It would have been good to have some oil sitting in those plug holes going into the heads a month ago. And then maybe we'll just disconnect the coil. We'll put a battery to it and we'll try to run it again. Maybe I'll put it in gear and I'll rock the car forward and back just to kind of jostle it, see if it's just something that needs to be freed up. Now, to reference my coupe real quick, this car was parked in 1973 in Chelmsford, Massachusetts, and I bought it in 2013, late 2013. So this car sat for ultimately 41 years, and I was able to turn it over before I even put it on the trailer. Once we got it home, my dad and I put a battery to it, put an external fuel source to it, and it fired up, like as if you had run it a few months prior. So let's hope we have the same luck with the four-door sedan. Well, first, I think I'll clean up the battery cables, since those are covered in corrosion. So that's not gonna help anyone. Oh yeah, corrosion everywhere. Let's get this air bonnet and air system off of here, and we'll pull some plugs. This breather normally just fits in there with some pressure. Oh, there's like a mud wasp nest started in the breather tube. That's not good for anyone. A few acorns, nothing crazy. These little J-hook clamps on the intake are 3/8. I remember because I've got mine off on the Mons all the time. And they just hook down into a hole on the housing of the carburetor. That's all that holds this thing down. Boy, it actually... Wow, that doesn't look too bad. Gonna vacuum all this stuff out first before I pull any plugs out of those heads. I did order some parts for this car. I probably should have just ordered plug wires too. Holy mackerel. Holy cow. Why is that on so tight? No way. That thing is in there. Well, I'm losing all my shade and it is really hot out today. And since the auto union's outside, we have a free bay in here. Going to do my best to push this thing inside. Now this is not the auto union. This is pretty heavy. And basically from right about here, right here, out is all downhill. You've seen me push stuff in this yard plenty of times by myself. And I never really do like it, but we're gonna do it. Got my wheel chock. You need it in this yard. Auto union might be in the way just a little bit. Go on, go on, go on. Let's try this one more time. Okay, this is the scary one. Pointing it towards the downhill. You're in a world of hurt if a car gets away from you on this driveway. This one's gonna be a push. Oh, no way. Wow. Okay. Wow, wee. That was a workout. Ay, ay, ay. Well, for the very first time, I've got 2 Corvairs in this shop. Very cool. Okay, disconnect power to the coil. So I thought maybe the alternator was seized, and if I'd taken the belt off, maybe it would turn over, but I feel like I can turn that a little bit. It's not outside the realm of possibility that the tensioner pulley is seized too, but I can kind of get a little bit of movement out of that too. Well, maybe I'll put it in gear, I'll jockey it back and forth, and try to free up anything inside, put a battery in it, we'll put power to it, and then maybe we'll try cranking it over. Okay, let's put this thing in gear. That should be first. Clutch feels good, like linkage at least. Clutch depresses and releases, and you can find a gear easier when you do that. Let's put a battery in it, turn this thing over. All right, so this is the battery I use to power my winch on my trailer, and if I was smart, I would have charged it after the last time I used it. Okay. Are we basically ready to turn this thing over? I'm gonna disconnect the suck line of the fuel pump, just so we're not pumping a bunch of garbage into the carburetors. I'd highly doubt if it starts turning over, we'd be turning it over long enough to actually prime this system if there is anything in that tank. The hardest part is getting the fitting that's on the hard line to spin free of the line and not twist the line. And that seems to be turning free of the line. Oh yeah. I don't want to jinx anything yet, but this is a Texas car and it's unbelievably rust free. I grew up in New Hampshire. I've always known the South as the land of rust-free cars, because anything that you need to take apart on a car that was driven through the Northeast winters is just a nightmare. Okay, let's see if this thing will turn over. Okay, this thing up in the neutral. I'll push the clutch in still just in case. Okay, let's see. Ooh, I like that. Is the fuel gauge moving? Okay. Ah, come on. That sounds like the starter's engaging. Well, I don't think it's the starter solenoid because it sounds like we're getting mechanical engagement. Yeah, that definitely sounds like it's engaging. This is my first time seeing this on a lift. And I'll tell you what, this thing is insanely solid. It's unbelievable to see even the overlapped pieces of steel all up in here. These little drop downs where the belly pan mounts to is all gone in mine. All gone. I mean, frame rails, look at how solid the frame rails are. Out to the pinch welds, the sills themselves, floors. We got some rot here, got some rot in this part of the floorboard. Window seals failed, and then water got inside, and then the carpets got wet, and then the water just stayed there. So that's not a big deal at all. I mean, look at how solid all this is. Pinch welds all the way down. Unbelievable. That oil pan's been hit hard too. Wow-wee. Wow, that's been hit. So the starter's right in here. That guy right there. We got the starter and we got the solenoid. If I were to guess, the solenoid's working just fine. And it sounds like it's actually engaging. Boy, so I don't know if there's a problem with the flywheel or the motor's stuck. Boy, how likely is that motor actually stuck? Being a Corvair guy, I have a whole separate starter and solenoid in a box right here. And normally, that's never the case. Well, right here, oh my goodness, that thing is so heavy. So, another starter and solenoid. What's Corvair specific is right here, this whole nose cone. My father has actually rebuilt this one, maybe? Can't remember. From a small block Chevy starter. Because all that's different is the nose cone and how it mounts to that air-cooled flat 6 in the back. So this is bench tested and proven to work, solenoid and all, so we can set that aside. So I guess I'll bring the car back down and we'll try turning the motor over by hand, manually. And as long as that turns, maybe we'll put it back up in the air and we'll swap the starter out. Okay, so the crank pulley bolt seems like 3/4, but it's pretty loose. And a 19 is just as loose, if not looser. That, an 11/16 won't even go on it. It's gotta be 3/4, but boy, that's loose. All right, let's see if this thing turns over. Oh boy, I don't like that at all. Oh, I don't like that at all. Wow, that seems stuck. That does not seem good. Let's take the belt off, see if that does anything. Could this really be a stuck Corvair motor? There we go. Okay. All right, guys. Next day, let the PB Blast soak on all the spark plugs. Decided to put my little 3/8 Milwaukee stubby impact on them on like setting 2, just kind of wrapping the throttle, trying to jolt them free. And cylinder 1 is the only one I was able to jockey free. So I haven't taken it all the way out yet. About to pull that out, take a look at it. Gonna try to work on the rest of them because it's really quite concerning that I can't turn the motor over by hand, even without the belt on. So all the other pulleys are freed up. Can't turn it over with power, even though it sounds like the starter's engaging. Because if the starter sounded like it was engaging, it might not be trying to turn the flywheel. So there still could be an issue with the solenoid or the starter, but I can't turn it over by hand. So that's kind of the concerning part. So I'm gonna pull all the spark plugs, then I'll see if I can turn it over by hand. I don't know, it's really starting to worry me that perhaps I bought this car going into it with all the confidence in the world, like my other Corvair. Day number 2 with some PB Blast soaking down in there. Let's hope we can get these things out. All right, let's zip this one out. We know we got this one loose. All right, what do we look like? What do we look like? Oh my gosh. This spark plug is mega rusty, all up on top. I didn't see any like water lines. It came from Texas. If it came from Houston, it's definitely been underwater. But there's no signs on the interior of like up to this level of water line. And there's no water in the motor. So it shouldn't be hydrolocked. Let's pump some mystery oil down in there while we've got it open. It's probably a better way to do this, but I bought this plunger baster thing to help do this. Makes less of a mess. A bunch of oil down that cylinder. Let's get another one freed up here. Might have to go to the heat. That one's not as rusty. They might just be so old. Perhaps this thing hasn't run in far longer than I was thinking. These plugs are ancient. Nope, that's not good. How did I get so lucky? So we got 3 of the 6 spark plugs out. Still can't turn it over by hand. It's not looking good. So with it in gear, this is an old trick I learned from my dad. Trying to use persistence to wear down stuck and stubborn automotive parts. I'm gonna continue to rock this thing back and forth while it's in gear to just get that motor to go one way and the other. It's not over full, it's got oil in it. Valves could be stuck. Valves could be stuck so badly that it's keeping it from being able to get turned over. And what I'm essentially doing is almost bending push rods, which I don't want to do. That's not even jockeying the fan back and forth. Oh no. Crank pulley isn't even moving. Oh boy. The pulley's not moving at all. Oh man. All right guys, engine cover is off and look at this. You know, honestly, this is less stuff, surprisingly, than what was in my Monza when we first got that taken apart. This is rough right here. This is just packed full. So this needed to be done anyway. To clean all this stuff out and to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, we can now get to the base of our spark plugs much easier. I'll be able to put a socket on those much easier and get heat to them much easier. Look at that thing. But yeah, that's what the top of a Corvair motor looks like. And out here we have all of the stuff. Carburetors, linkage, fuel lines, engine cover, alternator, plug wires, belt. Boy, I think it's coming. Oh yeah. Uh-oh, it doesn't look good. Oh no. Oh, I think we took the end of the threads out. Those definitely have aluminum in them. Look at that, plugs are literally falling apart. I don't have a Healy coil here, and honestly, I'm not gonna Healy coil it, but we don't have any movement in the motor, none. I think putting a Healy coil in that head is literally last. That's the last on the list, because this motor isn't even freed up yet. We might call it there. I mean, I might put some heat to the other two over here, just to see if I can get them out. I'm gonna put some oil down that one anyway. Maybe we'll let it sit. Well, that's not the end result I was hoping for with trying to get this car running. I had super high hopes. It was gonna be like the Monza and thing was just gonna start up without any issue, and Corvair motor, good. Corvair motors in general, good. There's a strong Corvair community here in Chattanooga. We even have a bunch of Corvair motors back home in New Hampshire. My dad's putting one over an S10 frame right now with a V8 up front, and he pulled the motor out of that, and that was complete. So I might even have some motors available to me for this. All right, guys, what do? Do we look for another Corvair motor? They're not the cheapest, but they can be found. It'd be nice to find another Corvair motor because everything will bolt in. I've got all the extra hardware and everything that kind of came off this one, and we bolt it in and we get it running, and then we focus on suspension and everything else we want to do. It'd be cool to do some sort of unique motor swap in it. I was really just hoping we could get it running with that motor, go through the whole car mechanically, electronically, and just make it a nice cruiser, and then go through suspension, bag it like we did the chop top, do wheels, and just make a nice four-door slammed cruiser out of it. Do we do something different with a motor swap? I don't want to Subaru swap it. I really don't even want to water cool it, to be honest. I really kind of just want to keep it Corvair powered. I've always wanted to put a Deutz air-cooled diesel in something, but they don't make flat opposed motors. They're all inline, and the four-cylinder inline Deutzes are just big boat anchor motors. So this episode being shoehorned in here was in hopes that within a day or two worth of work, we were driving this thing around the yard. Unfortunately, now we're faced with having to look for motors. I'm going to accept defeat on this one. It's not the result I was hoping for in this episode. You'll see more of it soon. So thank you guys so much for watching and for all of your support. Leave down in the comments below what you think I should do with this car, power plant wise, to be determined. Thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.